page 252, writes, "In the science of mind, we do not say everything is all right when it is all wrong. We do not say peace when there is no peace, but rather we try to discover what is wrong and why we do not have peace. We do not say that people are not poor, sick, or unhappy. We ask why these things should be if the original cause of all things is harmonious, perfect, radiant, and happy. In the practice of spiritual mind healing, we do not deny that people are ill, nor do we minimize the need of sanitation or of medical or psychological help. We seek to aid these other agencies by uniting with them in their efforts, by being grateful for their help, and by cooperating in every way possible with what they are doing. Please join me in speaking this declaration with conviction. I declare that I am free to be whole. My life reveals the power and presence of the source of life. All my needs are met now. I am free to experience the greatest good I desire, my highest and best now.
This is an interesting topic, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you. Let us not fool ourselves. I want to first start with the theme of the month, which is um, being free to be whole, that we are free to be whole. And wholeness is a very interesting thing. We talk about being whole, perfect, and complete, right? Because that's our spiritual truth. Wholeness also means inclusion. It means including all that is part of life as the whole. Realizing that as spiritual beings having a human experience, we are part of a cosmic whole. And yet, because we have freedom of choice and there is an infinite possibility of choices available to us, we get to experience the consequences of our choices, right? So we have freedom. Otherwise, we'd be automatons. That's the thing to realize. So we have this incredible freedom, and along with it, we have this roller coaster of a ride called human life that we're dealing with. And I love what Ernest Holmes says in that quote, because sometimes in spiritual teachings, we can get the idea that we're supposed to, we talk about looking beyond the conditions to the spiritual truth. And what we're talking about, though, it doesn't mean that we deny that the conditions are there. What it means is we realize that they have no power over us, that we have within us a creative potentiality and possibility. We have the creation of God within us, because we are individualized expressions of the divine. And we have the inspiration of universal mind of God available to us, with rich in ideas and solutions and possibilities. And we have the law, the universal law that operates upon our word. Our words become like molds, and our thoughts and our visions are molds that the universal law can work upon and bring new circumstances. So we are here not to sugarcoat things that are going on that are not for the highest and best of all. We are here to truly be the impetus for the forward movement of creation. There's a beautiful quote that Thomas Troward has that really brings that alive for me. I can't give you the whole quote, but this is the essence of it, is that we are centers of divine operation. And that because the universe, the presence of God, and you can see it in the universe, moves in the direction of expansion, that is our nature. We have that urge within us for expansion, for creating conditions that are beyond what they've been before in terms of a greater expression of the divine, a greater expression of love, peace, joy. We are here to bring that 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 nature of the divine into expression. We are here to bring heaven on earth. That's part of our mission statement that we say. We talk about we are the presence of love, co-creating heaven on earth, because we realize that that's what we're up to. So again, we don't want to sugarcoat these things and say they're not there. We want to realize that, so we don't fool ourselves and say, oh, it's not happening. We deal with what's happening by bringing the creative power forward. We allow these contrasting situations, we call it contrast, situations we don't like, to spark new desires, new ideas, new creations. And when we look at it that way, then we begin to see the wholeness of it and the perfection of how everything works. We also don't want to fool ourselves into thinking that because we have this beautiful tool called spiritual mind treatment that is so amazing and so powerful, that we neglect and ignore all of the other modalities that are out there, realizing that the divine works through all different avenues. So our teaching, being a teaching of inclusion, includes a holistic point of view. And I remember the first time I read Louise Hay's book, Heal Your Life. Anybody read that book before? Yeah. I remember when I read it quite a long time ago. I was, it's all of these teachings of science of mind that we so love and embrace. She has just a gift of bringing it forward and learning to love yourself and take care of yourself and so on. Well, what was interesting is when I went to the back of the book, she has a whole list, and it's totally holistic, of all the different modalities that you can use for body, for mind, for emotions, and for spirit. I'm not sure it's in those exact categories, but it's pretty much like that. And she gives a whole list of them. And so, again, this is a spirituality of inclusion, realizing that there is opportunity and good in taking this more holistic approach to life and living, while totally embracing the amazing power of our affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment, which is all about knowing the truth beyond the appearance and using the creative process in a really high vibrational way. Let us also not fool ourselves by thinking that we are beyond negative emotions. Anybody get that idea sometimes? Or thinking to ourselves, "Oh my gosh, I'm going through the same reaction again, even though I've done all this healing, and that must mean I'm not spiritual enough." When the truth is, challenges, there's a beautiful quote in the Bible: there will be trials and tribulations. That's part of our human experience. And it doesn't diminish who we are or how diligently we've been doing our spiritual practice. It's really all part of the evolutionary process. Again, I was talking about circumstances that are challenging are natural catalysts for our evolution. They are evolutionary drivers. And again, when we embrace that instead of resist it and push it away, when we allow ourselves to feel our feelings, then we're embracing the wholeness of who we are. I want to share with you a story by Colin Tippings that I think so beautifully illustrates this whole thing. Again, a little bit of background to kind of set this up is the conditioned mind. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about the tendency to do a bypass of our emotions. Because if we look at the way that we're designed as humans, we're sort of designed to go for pleasure and to avoid pain, right? Yeah. And so that's how addiction takes place, because we're so into going for pleasure that we don't want to deal with the painful emotions that are necessary for us to progress. So what that is then is, through the conditioned mind that wants to stay focused on pleasure and avoid pain, we literally look through life with a lens that we could call illusion. So what Ernest Holmes says is, he says the world is not a world of illusion, but of realities. So the manifest world, he doesn't like to call that an illusion. He says the illusion is not in the thing, but in the way that we look at it and think about it. So we don't want to say, oh, this is just all an illusion. Realizing that what we're experiencing is spirit and form. It's still spirit. It's bodies, all that we're seeing here is spirit and form. So the illusion comes in seeing things separately, seeing through the eyes or the lens of the conditioned mind that wants to cut off certain things. There was a beautiful article in the Science of Mind magazine this month called The Whole Enchilada by Dennis Merritt Jones. Anybody read that article? If you haven't, it's awesome. If you get the Science of Mind magazine, and there are some out there. He talks about how he went into a restaurant and ordered. They had a night where you could get the whole enchilada in this Mexican restaurant. So he ordered it, and he said, "I want the whole." He said to the server, "I want the whole enchilada, but I don't want the red peppers. I don't want the chilies. I don't want." He had this whole list, and so the server looked at him and said to him, "Then you really don't want the whole enchilada." The whole enchilada means all of it. And he thought, what a great metaphor for life, because that's what we tend to do. We want the whole enchilada, this whole life experience, but no, not those feelings and not those challenges. Just give me this path of bliss. So when we get on the spiritual journey, we get the idea that, okay, I'm going to get on this spiritual journey, I'm going to do all of this, and then I'm just going to be on a continuous path of bliss, and all of those other human emotions and stuff like that are just, they're not for me anymore. I just go straight to peace. So with that in mind, this is what Colin Tipping experienced, and I think so you'll identify with that, with what I just mentioned. He said in 1994, he conducted a workshop with a group of spiritual healers in an English monastery. And he said the English, at least at that point in time, were very much into stoicism and not dealing with their feelings. So he said, with that as a background, he's also has he's also English, a background and lives in England, or actually came from England but lives here now. So when he arrived to let himself into the monastery, there was nobody there. So he just let himself in and let all of his students in, and he started the workshop. And he began to share with them the idea that life is a journey of emotion or feeling, and actually feelings are a key component to advancing in your spiritual growth. So he said, what we're going to do today is we're going to discover what our buried feelings are, and we're going to work with them. And this group took a look at him, and they were like, we don't do that. We don't do that. This is the essence of what they said. We're spiritual, and we give it all to spirit. We go straight to peace. So he was just not making progress at all. And if anybody knows his work, which is radical forgiveness, it's all about dealing with your emotions in order to help shift the false beliefs and feeling the feelings fully and so on. So he said he was getting nowhere. And suddenly he said, Spirit intervened. So in walks this young monk in full habit, and he's all red and puffed up, and he said, "Who is in charge here?" And Colin's in the middle of a workshop, and he said, "I am." And so he continues on with his workshop, and the man said, "I want to speak to you immediately." And this is a monk, right, in full habit. And Colin Tipping said to everybody, I guess he turned to them because it must have been behind him, and he said, "Watch this." So he turns around and talks to the man, and he said, "I will talk with you when I am good and ready. When I'm good and ready, and I will not be good and ready until 12 noon." And to that, the monk screamed at him, "I need to talk to you now." And so Colin just continued on with what he was doing. So what happened is the people were shocked. Actually, he said to the man, "Get out of my room." And the students were shocked. You don't treat holy people this way, that they said. And Colin said, "Okay," he said, "how are you feeling right now?" And he said that was the shift that helped him to help them see that emotions and feelings are part of our lives. And they are also windows, great tools to help us discover what's lying in the subconscious mind that may not be serving us. And what that's and anyway, this is the conclusion of it that you'll love, is that when he finally did meet with the monk, he went up to him, hugged him, and said, "You saved my seminar. Thank you so much. You were our healing angel." So anyway, apparently the monk was upset because Colin hadn't rung the bell and let him know that he was there. And so Colin's comment on that was that there was obviously a false belief operating in the monk that he hadn't dealt with. But again, when we can't forgive, we can't move on until we deal with the feelings of anger, frustration, resentment, guilt, shame, all of those things. That is simply part of it. And if we just do mental work without the emotional work, then we have what's called spiritual bypass. Spiritual bypass. So spiritual bypass was actually a coin that was termed by a Buddhist therapist back in the early 1980s. And it simply means that when we use spiritual practices or ideas to avoid facing unresolved emotions and psychological wounds and false beliefs. So, I mean, we might even know what the false belief is, but if we don't deal with the emotions, remember, emotions are this amazing energy within us. If we don't deal with that, we don't make progress. And if we wonder why we're not making progress in certain areas of our life, we might want to look at that. Am I doing spiritual bypass? I love what Viktor Frankl says. He said, "What gives light must endure burning." What gives light must endure burning. So we must be able to be with the fire's heat, the heat of those emotions, and go into it. Face it, enter it, get intimate with it, whatever is there, whether it's scary or traumatic or raw or whatever it is. Welcome it. Welcome those emotions. Feel them fully. Breathe. Look at them. Locate them in our body without judgment, but with great curiosity is what is the message that's here for me? And then, the thing is, life has all kinds of signs and symbols that remind us of how important this work is. Think about the signs. I don't know if you've seen them before, but usually under a stop sign that says, "Proceed when clear." This is really great advice for navigating uncomfortable emotions. Proceed when clear. There's a statesman, Roman statesman called Seneca, who wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." And I believe that's true for all emotions. When we're in a high state of emotion, it's difficult to make decisions or to hear the guidance, that we, in order to make the right kinds of decisions. We end up making decisions from fear or from anger instead of from love and peace. So again, this is not about spiritual bypass. This is about dealing with the feelings. And one of the methods, and this is actually from Radical Forgiveness, I think it's really powerful, is if you have to write a letter, I'm thinking in terms of if we find ourselves angry with someone, write letters. Write exactly what you want to say to the person, but don't mail it. Put it in the drawer. And then a couple days revisit it. Is there still anger there? Write another letter if there is. Put it in the drawer. Until we are able to get ourselves to a state of peace where we can take action that comes from a higher place. And it might mean going back and communicating with that person, but communicating from a place of love instead of anger. So feeling and naming our feelings clears the mind, allows us to shift and be open and fertile ground for the inspiration of God. So again, we teach a philosophy of inclusion. So let us not fool ourselves that other modalities are not effective, that all we need to do is do what we do. Let us not fool ourselves by doing spiritual bypass, by avoiding our feelings. And let us not fool ourselves that there's nothing we can do about circumstances in life. We have the very power of God within us, within our word. We have that. We can use that. We can bring prayer to any type of situation in our own lives. We can bring prayer to each other, to things that are going on the planet. We don't want to avoid what's happening and ignore the circumstances. We want to stay compassionate. But we know that we can bring something to it to help heal conditions through the power of this mind. So I'm going to invite our practitioners to circle the room, and we're going to offer prayer, some prayer today. So would you do that, please? They didn't know I was going to do this, but I just felt motivated in the moment. And these are very powerful practitioners who have studied how to use the power of the word. So we're going to do prayer for ourselves, for our community, for the spiritual community, for our families, and for the world. And if you would like to join from your seats, you're welcome to do that as well, because I know many of you know how to do spiritual mind treatment. All right? Okay. So I am so grateful to know that God is all there is. One life, one